So the NBA's first team, all NBA teams were announced, and I thought this was so interesting. First team all NBA, okay? I don't think you could really have much of an argument here. One note is LeBron didn't make it. Now, you probably, off the top of your head, wouldn't put LeBron there after the season anyway. Injuries, Lakers were terrible, but there is clearly a changing of the guard happening in the NBA because all 5 of the NBA's first team players are 27 or younger. No LeBron, no Steph, no Kevin Durant. There is a change afoot. Nikola Jokic, the league MVP, first teamer. Giannis, of course, likely the best player in the NBA. I think he's the best player in the NBA right now, first teamer. Luka Doncic, also all-NBA first team. Kind of impossible to argue those guys. Also on the team, Jason Tatum, still playing, and Devin Booker, whose Phoenix Suns were just absolutely phenomenal this year. So truly, and you could have certainly argued Joel Embiid as NBA MVP because he was battling with Jokic at the same center position. He drops down to the second team, even though you could easily have put Joel Embiid on that first team All-NBA. So think about how different the first team looks compared to what it was for the last decade or 15 years. And Embiid's a little older than the other guys. He's 28. But again, no LeBron, no Steph, no Kevin Durant. First team All-NBA. It's a new generation. And I think in many ways, it's great for the NBA to have this new generation. And look at the guys on first team that are still playing. Doncic, Tatum, and guys that, obviously are going to be able to kind of float their players or their teammates and their franchises for hopefully a long time. So young guys picking up the slack and taking that rope and pulling it and taking that baton and carrying it is a really good thing for the NBA because now, look, you've got hope in Dallas to win an NBA championship post-Dirk. You've got hope in Phoenix, who have never won an NBA championship. The Milwaukee Bucks hadn't won one since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was Lou Alcindor. They're coming off an NBA championship. This is good for the NBA to have this infusion. And had the Denver Nuggets been healthy this year, it would have been a different story, you would think, for Nikola Jokic and Denver. Out of these guys, okay, Jokic, Giannis, Doncic, Tatum, and Booker. They're all 27 or younger. Who ends up having the best career? Frankly, I think it's really 3 guys you're talking about. Jason Tatum, who's still ridiculously young. Luka Doncic, who's still ridiculously young and ascending to best player in the NBA at some point in his career. And Giannis, who's already the best player in the NBA and has an NBA championship. Mraz, I'm going to throw that out to you. I'm assuming you would take Booker and Jokic out of the equation. Who do you think ends up with the greatest NBA career that at NBA 100, that guy's ranked higher than the other guys on this list? He's one of the 10 greatest players in the NBA's history, perhaps.
In the history, it's tough for me to say any of these because I'll say this. I would have had a different answer pre-postseason. I think Jason Tatum is on the verge to being like a top 5 Celtic of all time.
Top 5 Celtic. So
like
we'll put Russell, Bird, McHale, Parrish.
I think he passes all the recent.
Which is we have to maybe bypass the 08 Celtics. Is Kevin Garnett
Well, I
a
was going to say,
Celtic? Is
people
Paul
love
Pierce
Paul.
a Celtic?
Right, Paul Pierce is
Paul Pierce is a Celtic.
right.
Rather,
Bob
but Ray
Ryan
Allen,
loves the all-timeness of Paul Pierce. I think Jason Tatum will go down as like the greatest Celtic since the late '80s Celtics. I think that he will be catastrophically in that place. I think I've seen enough to know that his game is just elevating and elevating and elevating.
catastrophically in that place, huh?
Yeah, I think that Jason Tatum is going to be in those number 0 jerseys. It's going to be an all-time Boston icon.
Okay.
And you and me, I hate Boston, so I don't want to say that.
Okay, so you think that Jason Tatum ends up as, let's say, the third greatest Celtic of all time? Russell, Bird, well, Kuzie's in there too. So Russell, Bird, Kuzie, Tatum.
Could end up in that Mount Rushmore, yes.
Okay. And then that would mean he has a better NBA career than Giannis and Doncic?
Yes, I think that's on the table.
Really?
I think that's on the table.
Okay, so is that because of total titles won?
Yes, I think that's the difference. Will Giannis maybe stash another MVP or two, and Tatum maybe doesn't get to that kind of hardware? But I think in Boston, where we found out now they've played in, half the Eastern Conference Finals of all time, I just think he's destined and set up to play the most premier spots and probably win the most titles in what seems like a trajectory of a parity-driven NBA. I think you're going to get 2 or 3 Tatum rings before all is said and done, and I don't think Giannis or Doncic will get that.
Okay, so total titles because the Boston Celtics are run very well, because they have a good core right now that's relatively young, at least with Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Because the Celtics hang banners regularly, although they haven't hung one since 2008, Jason Tatum might end up, you're right, ending up with the most titles out of this list. I don't think Jason Tatum, though, when his career is over, is viewed as a greater player than Doncic or Giannis.
Perhaps not.
I think those guys, you're right, might end up with less rings. I think both those guys will end up as being viewed as greater all-time NBA players.
And again, that might be true, but the NBA becomes a weird sport in that reality. If Tatum is the shining star on what could be the premier organization for a 5-8-year run in the NBA and wins multiple titles, he is going to be in NBA history, I think, looked at more fondly than a Doncic or a Giannis.
It's fair. I think it's either Doncic or Giannis, and the thing is Giannis already has the ring and already has the MVPs, and he's only 27. So he's got, let's say, another 5 or 6 years of potential dominance to add more on that. He's ascended to best player to the NBA in my estimation. He's already got major hardware, and he doesn't seem like he's the type of body or build or player who's going to wear down soon. Now, he plays physically. Guys tend to be more physical with him than other players. You know, we talked about this earlier in the week, that he's the type of player that doesn't get the benefit of calls a lot of times because, much like Shaq, he's bigger, stronger, faster. And so other players get away with more physicality on him without fouls being called. But if he's already got multiple MVPs and he's got a championship and he's the best player in the NBA by the age of 26 or 27, that's already a catalog that Doncic doesn't have any of, okay? I think Doncic actually has a greater potential because Doncic right now is 23 years old. And at some point in his career, he will be an MVP. It feels completely inevitable. Will he win a championship? That does not feel inevitable. Will he win multiple MVPs? Perhaps. But will he win rings? Will he win a ring? Will he ascend to greatest player to the NBA? Probably. But again, we've already seen Giannis do it. Now, Giannis has 4 years on him. So 4 years from now, does Doncic have a ring and 2 MVPs? Maybe. It's certainly in the realm of conversation. But I've seen Giannis do it. What I think is amazing is that look at this list. Jokic is 27, multiple MVPs. Giannis is 27, already has a ring and is best player in the NBA. Devin Booker's 25, and this should have been his year to win a ring. And Doncic and Tatum's 24 and Doncic is 23. These guys are going to be really good for a really long time. These guys are all going to be dominant players for the next 4 or 5 years minimum. And for Doncic, probably 10. For Tatum, probably 8 to 10. It's an amazing cast that the NBA has now, and it's definitely a shift. And maybe this is just kind of a randomly poor NBA playoffs. It hasn't had great games. The best series has been Celtics versus Bucks, but it hasn't had great teams or great games necessarily, or great series. But we are in some type of bridge/transition to where these guys will take over the league, or already have done so in many ways. And the era of Kevin Durant, of Steph Curry, and of LeBron James, who were seemingly in every NBA Finals for 15 years straight, one of those three guys, it's past. It's kind of amazing. You blink, and that's what happens in sports.
And by the way, D.A., we just went through all of this because of the first team stuff. The best guy of them all may not even be on this list. That could be Ja Morant.
I don't think Ja is going to be a greater player than Giannis or Doncic.
Wow, okay.
I don't. I think he's going to be a great player, but I don't think he'll have a better career than Doncic or Giannis. But, again, how old is he? I can't wait to see his next 10 years.
Yes, Ja Morant is going to be one of the most exciting players in the NBA for the next decade.
And Zion, nowhere to be found.
Oh.
He should have been on this list.
Too fat.